Formula One returns to Brazil and the iconic Interlagos circuit for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And at the end of a triple header, which has seen Ferrari win 2 races on the bounce, can they make it 3 in a row? While Max Verstappen and Lando Norris trade blows for the Drivers' World Championship. Welcome to Brazil. Welcome to your weekend warm-up. And welcome to the pit lane here in Interlagos with me, Will Buxton, with Alex Jacques, with James Hinchcliffe. And guys, great to be back in Brazil. I say back in Brazil, it's your first time.
And wonderful to be here. This is one of the sport's iconic racetracks. The food's great. Band practice has started over our shoulder. It's great to be here.
It really is. And Hinch, this track is, as Jakesy said, such an iconic one. You got to drive it earlier today. They've relayed it.
They have. All new asphalt the whole way around the place, 4.3 kilometers worth. It looks great, but it throws up a lot of question marks for these teams and drivers over what that's going to do to the tires. We've already had that at a few different venues this year. Add into the fact, like Austin, it's a sprint race, only one practice. So many questions for that 1 hour of practice before we head into qualifying.
Set up beautifully, and off the back of that incredible weekend in Mexico, another Ferrari victory. Let's see how it all shook out.
Our venue is intense, vibrant. It's Ferrari versus Red Bull versus McLaren.
That sounds like the recipe for a great Grand Prix.
Max Verstappen's got the inside line. He's surely going to get the lead. Off the road goes Carlos Sainz, and into the barriers for Yuki Tsunoda.
Carlos Sainz, desperate to get back into the lead.
Is he going to go for the late braking move? He is! That's the lead for Carlos Sainz.
Can Norris do the same?
Max Verstappen barges his rival off the road.
See how you do under pressure.
Throwing it to the inside. They're both off. Extraordinary.
This guy's dangerous.
Verstappen with a penalty now at 20 seconds.
Norris is flying.
You need your best driving now. Let's go.
Oh, big moment off the road. Lando Norris is through to second place. But listen to this. Carlos Sainz wins the Mexico City Grand Prix.
Oh, het is heel goed. Gracias, Mexico.
A phenomenal race in Mexico City, and an unexpected Ferrari win? Or do we have to come into the weekends now, Alex, believing that Ferrari do have this up their sleeves every single race weekend to be that competitive?
They've got the knowledge of their car. I think that's the defining factor in this rule set, actually. The knowledge of how you manipulate your car is so important. We've been talking about the updates for all the other teams. Ferrari didn't bring any, but Ferrari know how to get the best out of their car. So yeah, they are starting as slight favourites, and they delivered again in Mexico City.
Absolutely incredible. And of course, we saw the fight between Max and Lando. What was acceptable in Austin perhaps went a little too far last time out. Those 2 penalties for Max. Certainly the stewards seeing it that way.
Stewart's seeing it that way. I think a lot of the drivers in the paddock seeing it that way as well. And even when you hear the interviews from Max afterwards, I think he knows. He knows exactly what he's done, what he's doing. I think fundamentally he probably agrees that it's a bit too much. But as long as the rules allowed it, he was going to try it. He's found where that line is. He got penalized appropriately. I think we'll see that 0.5% dialing back moving forward to make sure he doesn't get those penalties, but it was fascinating.
Do you believe genuinely that Max Verstappen will dial anything back?
0.5%.
A half?
0.5%. Because 2 10-second penalties, that doesn't help.
Think about what we saw from Austria to Silverstone, that 0.5% dial back. So they went wheel to wheel for the win there, went to Silverstone. They did not battle each other. I'm with Hinch. I think he knows that he's got to row it back a little bit.
Fascinating, and it is a real battle for the Drivers' World Championship. Of course, 34 points on offer this weekend in the sprint, but Hinch, Max is the only driver in Formula One that scored points in every single sprint in history, and of course he's won the last 6 on the bounce.
It's bizarre because for at least the last one, they didn't have the best car, but he pulled out a great result in Austin. This is a track he's run well at in the past, but I gotta be honest, when you've seen the pace of the Ferrari the last few weekends, and you look specifically at where the McLaren's been strong the last few weekends, I think this one's definitely gonna favor both of those teams over the Red Bull. So it's gonna be tough for Max to keep that streak alive, I think.
And we've now got to fight for the Constructors' Championship as well. It was looking like it was McLaren versus Red Bull. It's now McLaren versus Ferrari.
What year is it? It's McLaren versus Ferrari for the Constructors. No one would have said that at the start of the year.
No, absolutely incredible. But of course, the focus for so many is on that Drivers' World Championship. Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris, the two of them after recent spats speaking in the paddock earlier today.
Lando, good to see you. A few days on from Mexico and another battle with Max. You said after the race that you were ready to expect something like this from him. What are your reflections on the weekend now and as we arrive here, and what's the mindset moving forward?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. The race itself, of course, different things happened, and I'm just happy we made it to the end of the race. It was a strong race with good race pace, and reassuring coming into another weekend that we have that pace comparing to Ferrari. Nothing else changes, just heads down and hope for another good one.
Are you going to change the way you go racing this weekend?
Yeah, I've heard that before, right, in my career. So it's my 10th year in Formula One. I think I know what I'm doing.
I want clean, fair racing. And that's what I do, that's what I provide, and that's how I race. It's how I've always raced in my career. It's not for me to change, it's for the other side to change.
Okay.
I think it's just you win some, you lose some. That's how it is in racing in general. And yeah, I like to win. I don't like to lose. I think not many people like to lose. And I think, yeah, I always just try to maximize the result. And like I said, some you win, some you lose.
I mean, I've not spoken to him. I've not really seen him. I saw him this morning and we smiled, but that was also, for me, the same. It doesn't change. I race in a strong and fair way like I've always done. It's for him to change, not me, so.
Interesting to hear from our two championship protagonists. Now, there was a lot of debate, even after Austin, as to what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable in terms of defensive position. Hinch, what did Max do so differently in Mexico that saw him get those two penalties as opposed to not getting a penalty in Austin? And in fact, you know, Lando getting that penalty.
Well, there's two incidents that you have to look at, and they are both a little bit different. The turn 4 one is the one I kind of want to focus on more because that's more similar to what we saw in Austin. Basically what happened in turn 4 was Lando learned his lesson. Turn 12 in Austin was all about whose front axle was ahead at the apex. That's kind of been the crucial wording that people have really been focusing on, the stewards have really been focusing on. Lando, trying an outside pass in a tight 90-degree corner, knew that he had to get his axle ahead of Max's by the apex. He did that. Max still didn't give him the room. By having your front axle ahead at the apex, it is now, the onus is on the inside car to leave the passing car on the outside enough racing room, which Max just didn't do. Lando had to cut across the grass and came out in front. That's why that first penalty was applied, which is different than Austin. Austin, he was ahead on the inside at the apex, which allowed him to kind of disregard the car on the outside. The turn 7 one, that was just a blatant disregard for the rules and for everything. He just fired it into a corner, didn't hit the brakes, I don't think, for a corner that isn't really a passing opportunity.
Were you surprised to see that from Max, the turn 7 one specifically?
No, this is a fight for a Formula One World Championship. This is a fight where he knew that he didn't have the race pace, and when you're going wheel to wheel week after week after week, like we've seen in previous years, that is where a driver is truly tested. And that is the first time, I'd say, all year long where Max's wonderful command of the car either deserted him in that moment or by choice, but either way, he had to go to a place that he's not been to all year. The reason that it's been within the rules in Austin and last week wasn't is that he's been able to masterfully get to the apex first, to roll off the brake and to position the car whereby you can look at the rules and you can go, I agree with these rules or I don't agree, but I'm within them.
Yeah.
And turn 7 was beyond. That is the pressure of a world championship.
Hinch, I've never been a fan of not giving room to a driver trying something on the outside, just running them out of space. But as a racing driver, you know that inside line it's almost sacred ground. That's where you want to be. Are we at risk of becoming like football, soccer, with VAR and drawing imaginary lines on a racetrack as to who gets their axle ahead at a certain point and where is the apex and is it a late apex corner and at what angle do we bring that line out and can you just fire a move around the outside with no hope of making the corner because you've got your axle ahead at some arbitrary imaginary VAR line on the track? Is there a risk of that?
It's tough because I'm with you. I don't really respect it either. I don't enjoy watching it. We saw what real racing can be when you give some respectful racing room when the Mercedes teammates went at each other late in the race. There was a lot of side-by-side action in that same part of the racetrack. Ultimately, an outside pass is tough. The guy on the inside usually does have the right for the corner, but once your wheels are ahead, you do sort of dictate the amount of room that the car on the inside has. If they just decide to open their hands up, yeah, at some point, someone's got to be the person that decides whether you're crashing or not. and it often does end up in the hands of the guy on the outside. That's just it's a lack of racing respect in a way, but it's the way that the sport is developed. I do think changes need to be made. I think a lot of the drivers agree with that, and I'm curious to see where it goes. But what we saw from the Mercedes guys, that's what should be considered when writing the new rules, because that was good hard racing.
Yeah, it's interesting how we've managed to get ourselves into this spot. One thing, of course, the race threw up was another Ferrari victory, because as Lando and Max were squabbling, Carlos Sainz disappeared off into the distance. He was incredibly happy, of course, to have got that result. Just 4 races left for him as a Ferrari driver. Let's hear from Carlos now.
An incredible run from yourself and Ferrari recently. We spoke with your dad post-race in Mexico, and he said he'll enjoy this one, but very quickly move on to thinking about getting another one. How proud are you of winning that extra race with Ferrari?
Very proud, because it was, I think I put a lot of pressure in my shoulders with wanting to add another victory before I left Ferrari. And I was starting to feel the pressure and build up that pressure, and to do it in Mexico in front of my family and my friends, and obviously for myself and for Ferrari, was something incredible that I will never forget, and something that makes me incredibly proud.
2 wins in 2 for this triple header for Ferrari, who now sits second in the Constructors' Championship. Do McLaren have to be worried about Ferrari now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a heck of a run they're on. 2 double podiums in a row as well. So both drivers performing, which is key. I mean, you look at Lando, he's been consistent. Oscar's been a little bit hit and miss the last few Grand Prix. And then obviously with Red Bull, they've only got 1 driver consistently scoring at the front. So, but yeah, McLaren has to worry about Ferrari, absolutely.
And this is the key now, isn't it, Jakesy? Because Red Bull slipping to 3rd in the Constructors creates major headaches, major questions, notably, and it's awful to have to keep saying it, but over the future of Sergio Perez, because, as Hinch said, you need both drivers bringing home the points.
Yeah, let's go on what's been said on the record.
Yeah.
One of the biggest offenders, no matter what sort of day it's been for Sergio Perez, has been Christian Horner. After the Mexico City Grand Prix, that changed. He said it's a performance-based business. The defense of his driver, which has been great, open and on the record all the time, ended. And as a result, there's only one direction of travel there. That second Red Bull seat is now up for grabs.
It's an amazing turn. Is that solely down to them dropping to 3rd in the Constructors? Because that's a huge loss of revenue for the team. And Checo does have sponsors, which he brings to the team. Is he now costing them more than he brings?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think they're also looking at 2025 and going, rules remain the same to next year. Can you afford to be 3rd 2 years in a row rather than, and Mercedes will regroup. I know they've got a rookie joining that team, but I think this is a long view rather than just looking at this year's championship.
And all while Liam Lawson, who's come in for the remainder of the season, appears to be doing a great job. Elbows out, creating a little bit of animosity between some of his rivals out there on track. But as he said today in the paddock, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win. How impressed have you been, or have you been impressed with him since he's come back?
Remarkably impressed. I mean, Austin was an incredible performance, with all those engine penalties, got 3rd in the one segment of qualifying he was really allowed to participate in, and then that drive from 19th into the points in the Grand Prix was just incredible. First time in the car this year, first Grand Prix of the year, to just walk in with seemingly no dust to blow off, no rust in the racecraft. The racing with Alonso was absolutely incredible. I mean, that's one of the fiercest wheel-to-wheel combat drivers in the in the field, and he did a masterful job racing him.
Incredible stuff from him, and of course, if he does get that seat in Red Bull next season, it opens up a VCARB seat, and up steps Franco Colapinto, who it appears the entire world of Formula One has fallen in love with through his just beautiful racecraft and just the joy that he has in racing. How realistic do you see that option of going to VCARB next year for Franco Colapinto? Because he ain't going to be racing at Williams.
Yeah, it's the tried and tested route, isn't it? Williams put a driver in for a super sub appearance, and then the Faenza-based team run them for a full season or a few races the next year. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it feels like they are choosing drivers by raffle. Remember when Brendan Hartley just texted Helmut Marko saying, "Can I have a drive?" And the reply was yes. So it's a bit strange how things have gone on there, but Franco Colapinto knew he had 9 races to change his Formula One career, his motor racing career. He's taken that chance, and I think, he's a favourite, I think, to still be on the grid for next year.
They will have to pay for him, though. They'll have to break him out of the Williams deal. They'll have to pay money for him. And, of course, dropping Sergio won't be cheap either. Have to wait and see how that all rolls out. But Franco Colapinto, very, very happy to be here in Brazil. This will be pretty much his home race, and having spoken to a lot of Brazilian fans today, they are embracing him as one of their own.
If Williams cannot give me a race seat, I think the normal thing is that they allow me to go somewhere else and that they find the best opportunity for me for the future. But I'm not the right person to be asked. I should be the last one, you know. I'm here with Williams this weekend, and I'm gonna try to do my best here in Brazil. It's a very exciting race, great atmosphere, and I cannot wait to be driving the Williams around Interlagos. So, look, it's I think for the future, and it will be great that it happens. I thought I was not gonna be racing F1 next year, and that's still my first view. So I don't really get too excited about whatever is they're talking around. But yeah, let's see.
Now, with all the talk about Franco Colapinto and Liam Lawson and movements at Red Bull, there is, of course, one seat remaining down here at Sauber. Jakesy, for a while, it's looked like it could be Valtteri Bottas, could be someone else. What do you know? What are you hearing?
Well, Valtteri Bottas has agreed terms, but they haven't announced him with being with the team. So it would suggest that they're giving a real consideration to current leader of the Formula 2 Championship, Gabriel Bortoleto, go for a bit of youth. The pendulum has swung that way, hasn't it? Having had no rookies at the start of this year, suddenly everyone fancies a rookie.
Yeah, it really has started to swing. One thing that has swung as well is the weather. Drops of rain already down here in the pit lane, and that could have a huge effect on this weekend. As we were saying at the top of the show, this circuit has been completely resurfaced in the run-up to the race. It has been blasted, hosed down as well to try to get rid of some of that bitumen. But out there on the circuit right now, Ruth Buscombe taking a closer look at what this means potentially for tyres and race strategy.
So here we are in the brandly new resurfaced Interlagos track. And if you have a look down here, you can see it's really, really black. What does this mean? It means that when the sun is out, the track temperature rockets. Today it was mid-20s in terms of the air, but the track hit 54 degrees. Now that is really hot for a Formula One circuit. And this impacts how the tyres perform, not just in qualifying, but also in the race. We're one step softer on compounds this year. We have the softest range, same tyres we have somewhere like Monaco. We have the C3 as a hard, the C4 as the medium, and the C5 as the soft. And all the teams are expecting that on Sunday, and even in the sprint, it's going to be real tough for that C4 and that C5 tyre. They're likely to suffer with graining, overheating, high degradation, making the hard tyre probably the favourite child of the race weekend. If it rains, which it does look like there's a chance on Sunday, it could also mean that the track is going to be really, really tough on tyres. These aspersions means that the rain is going to sit in those gaps rather than on top of it, and which means that it is going to be likely to be a bit tricky in wet conditions.
Down here at Aston Martin, and James and Alex have been replaced by a Felipe. Hello.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Really good, mate. How has it been being back at home here in Interlagos?
It's amazing. I think every time I come here, obviously I feel at home. I don't need to say that anymore, but obviously, you know, even on a Thursday like today, you see that all the fans are just too warm, and it's so cool, like the passion that they have, and yeah, they're so nice to me every time.
It's great to be back. You were back in the car in Mexico. How was it?
Yeah, it was cool. It was I would say very short session, but it's I mean, it was enough to get to, you know, lower a little bit this car, which I didn't drive for the whole year, so it was the first time driving the 24 car, and yeah, it was a cool experience. New track, new car, so yeah, I'm trying to get to know that in 5 laps, whatever I did. So yeah, it was quite cool experience, and I think the outcome was good. I was happy with my job.
Good stuff. We know now that Fernando, who was celebrating his 400th Grand Prix, wasn't actually very well. Obviously, he missed the media day, but it's since been announced he had an intestinal infection and has flown back to Europe to get that treated, and will be flying back out, and has missed today as a result. He's such an integral part of this team, such an important part of this team. When you've got something like that as a driver, how hard is that to drive through that kind of an experience?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. Obviously, you know, it's not something that is so easy to cope with in the car as well, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite complicated. But obviously, as you said, he's a leader and he has the job to get done. So he did that. He was still very competitive. So that was very impressive from him. So yeah, he did the job for sure.
I want to focus on Brazil very quickly while we're here. Your home race, your home country. What is it about this place, these fans, this sport that seems to mesh so well? Obviously, celebrating, or commemorating, I should say, the 30th anniversary of Ayrton Senna's death here this year. What is it that keeps the fans so engaged with Formula One?
I think you said it all pretty much. I think it's all the people missing someone like Senna, to represent the country. They all, got used to that. Which can be a problem, you can't get used to Senna, which has been the best ever. So, it's hard to find anyone close to him. But obviously, people are really willing to find someone to represent the country, and I'm happy that they are also, thinking that's me, and that's a really special thing for me to think that they are, cheering on me for that. But also, the whole thing about this race, obviously. Every year there is something different happening. We're just talking about it, and now it's drizzling a little bit, and this kind of things just spice up the races every time we come here. So it's a very cool place to have races. There's a lot of history. The fans are amazing, and of course the races are incredible.
Always incredible races.
Yes.
Always. One guy who we know was a huge Ayrton Senna fan will be driving his 1990 McLaren later this weekend. It's Lewis Hamilton.
I love coming here. I've been really excited about the trip. And just getting back, every opportunity I have to spend time here, you learn more about the culture. You are able to engage more. I know Senna Foundation did an amazing event last night with all the great work that they're doing, and it's just the colors, it's Ayrton, it's the culture, the people. So you really vibe off that through the whole weekend. I never in a million years thought I'd ever get to drive Senna's car here. I remember the races when he finally won here and held the flag, and it will definitely be quite an emotional experience.
It will be a dream come true for Lewis Hamilton on Saturday night when he gets to drive that car in his adopted home country. He is an honorary Brazilian citizen. But Jakesy, it's not all been smooth sailing for Mercedes this year. A car which it seems they understand on some weekends and don't understand on others. Or do they just not understand it, but it comes good sometimes?
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton described the year as turbulent in the press conference earlier, and I think that sums it up really nicely. Some massive highs like Silverstone, and some races like Austin where they're spinning off or not understanding it, and then Mexico when George started the weekend like that. I think the best thing about their Mexico City Grand Prix was that they had two cars all the way to the flag and loads of data to go with it.
Yeah, lovely stuff. What do you make of this Mercedes car this year, Hinch? Do you think they've got a full handle on it, or is it still just these regulations that they haven't been able to completely lock down on?
Yeah, I think you look even just back as recently as Mexico, FP3, Hamilton's super happy with the car, the balance, the grip, everything, very few changes, goes into qualifying, the whole thing's just on its head. It's such a difficult car to get a grasp on. The setup window seems to be very narrow, and I think that's really the big goal for this team right now. And you kind of nailed it earlier in that what Ferrari have done so well is they brought these upgrades. They didn't change the upgrades, they changed the setup of the car to work better with the upgrades. I don't think the setup window on the Mercedes is where they need it to be, and even a small change in track condition and ambient condition and wind, whatever it is, it just throws the car to a quite literally undrivable state. I mean, we don't see guys like that making those kind of mistakes very often. We've seen a lot of that out of that car this year.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton in Austin putting it in the gravel.
I don't ever remember that happening.
One team that does seem to have a handle on their car, Haas. What a phenomenal run of races they're having.
Yeah, complete contrast basically to the entirety of team history since they entered Formula One. They can develop the car deep into the season. That's complete. And think about that from every single person in the team. That's motivation all the way through the year now. That's such an important thing to have. And both drivers putting it to great use.
Oh, particularly Kevin. I mean, let's look, last few races of his Formula One career. Again, an astonishing run.
He's been so good. It's almost like he's at peace with what's happening. The car's really come into a position that he's enjoying driving it more. He's got more confidence in it. Nico's really always had the better of him on Saturdays. The last few rounds, less so. But it's tough. I mean, they're doing so well. They're looking strong for 6th in the championship, which is 2 spots ahead of their goal for the year. And neither driver is going to be around next year to enjoy the fruits of that, which is really the tragic part.
And this was a team at the start of the season that was predicting they would be slowest of all. Alpine, we talk about turbulent seasons, they've had one. Great couple of race weekends for Pierre Gasly, though. Quali in Austin, sensational. Race fell apart for him, admittedly, but then last weekend does the business up in the top 10.
I think that was really important that they converted another good qualifying, because if you keep putting it in the top 10 and fading away, that is so dispiriting for the entire team. So nice for Pierre, and they needed that. First time he was in the points since the Dutch Grand Prix.
And Williams, Hinch. We look at that team, we look at what's going on there with Franco, obviously impressing so many. They need a strong end to the season as well, because they're in that fight.
They are. With Alpine having this uptick in performance, you know, both cars have the upgrade as of Mexico, and we saw the points there. That gap came down. Neither Williams driver had a particularly good Mexico City Grand Prix, so now it's down to, I think, 3 points. And we know how much money is at stake every single position in the Constructors' Championship. So there's still 4 rounds left. They've got to get 1 or 2 of those points that are going to be on offer in the bottom half of the top 10.
And 2 of those 4 half the race weekends left are, of course, sprint weekends. This is one of them. Ruth, tell us about sprint strategy, tyre strategy, and how this weekend is going to play out for the teams.
So, because it's a sprint weekend, teams only have 2 hards, 4 mediums and 6 softs for the whole race weekend, which is actually pretty interesting, because in P1 they've already got to commit whether they want to keep those 2 hard tyres. We're thinking they probably all will, but that hard tyre could be really, really effective both in the sprint and in Sunday's race, which is expected to be a 2-stopper. But it's Sao Paulo, so it can always rain. It was glorious sunshine, and here you always have to look up because the cells just pop up out of nowhere. And if it rains, it's going to be even more interesting. We've seen great strategies here. Hulkenberg 2012 jumped 2 pit stops by staying out when it was a little bit drizzly. Max Verstappen overtook from P16 all the way to P3 in 16 laps in the last wet race here we had in 2016. No matter what, dry or wet, it is going to be a really interesting race. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Ruth. What role will the weather play? There will be weather.
Well, that's a bold prediction, Buxton.
There's always weather.
Well, I mean, there's weather. There's nice weather. There's poor weather. There's always weather.
Yes, exactly.
You're saying there's always going to be bad weather?
No, I just said there's always going to be weather.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why it was a bold prediction.
Indeed. Have we covered off all the teams? I think we have.
I think so.
Let's take a look at the schedule for the rest of the weekend. Free practice. The only free practice of the weekend comes at 11:15 tomorrow before sprint qualifying at 3:15 local time. Then it is through to sprint Saturday. Your sprint taking place 10:20 local time here on the 2nd of November with qualifying for the Grand Prix at 2:30 in the afternoon. Then race day, Sunday, 1 p.m. local time for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Right then, chaps. Favorite time of the show for everybody. Predictions time. Bold predictions time. What are you going with?
I'm going with Lando Norris to win for the first time in Brazil and the 2 Ferrari drivers to join him on the podium.
I love that. Hinch?
I agree that I think McLaren's going to have the strongest package here. I do think Oscar is going to get out of this. I call it a slump. It's not like he's been poor, but I think he's going to be up there with his teammate. But yeah, then it's the Ferraris. And they've been rotating, haven't they? It was Charles in Austin. It was Carlos in Mexico. But I'm going to go Carlos. I think he's flying high. He's got a lot of confidence right now.
Will Max win the sprint?
No.
No.
Bold. So won't win the Grand Prix. Hasn't won since Spain. But he's won every sprint. No sprint win for Max.
Don't think so.
Fascinating stuff. Okay. No Max wins at all. Right, that is your lot, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. My thanks to both of you for your insight and your input. Thanks to Ruth Buscombe. As always, it is promising to be an incredible weekend here, as it always is in Interlagos. What role will the new track surface play? What role will the weather play? Join us to find out on a circuit which never disappoints.
It is a mighty venue which can provide a shock from absolutely nowhere.
Welcome to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Good reaction time for Lando Norris. Albon is into the wall with the Haas as well. Fernando Alonso, how brave is he feeling? There's your answer.
An iconic circuit.
What a move, Fernando Alonso! On the last lap, Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.